My heart always skips an extra beat when I see an isometric or top-down racer hitting the release schedule, and SuperSpec Rallycross is a game I've been looking forward to since I played its demo earlier this year. This game has 20 circuits and 12 different cars for you to go racing for 1 to 4 players in local split screen to be able to battle for the top step of the rostrum. This game is certainly more towards the arcade side of the arcade to sim spectrum. If I was to put Circuit Superstars on the isometric and top-down racers as like the pure sim side of things, this is certainly no bang bang racing or anything where you're throwing loads and loads of weapons at each other like Mashed, for example. This is much more arcadey handling, but you will still need to brake, you will still need to think about your general trajectory, and this game has a really interesting handling model that I liken much more to the Takara games of like ChoroQ, for example, where you're going to have to nudge the car around repeatedly on a very on or off style of movement, and I'll kind of explain that a bit more in detail. So if you're looking for something more arcadey, then SuperSpec Rallycross is certainly going to be up your street. If you're looking for long races, fuel, damage, different cars having different performance, none of that applies to this game whatsoever, and for some people that will be a bonus, for others that will be a drawback, so it's just worth getting that up front so that kind of pitches your expectations in the right manner. So let's take on what SuperSpec Rallycross has to offer. So when you open the game, you get Grand Prix mode, which places 4 tracks into a cup, and whoever gets the most points at the end of those 4 races wins. Single race, which is just a single race. Then you've got time trial, which comes with global and friend leaderboards. You do have to hold on the screen for a second for it to kind of refresh out, but it's been quite handy, and I'm pleased to say I'm at least top on 1 leaderboard last time I checked, but I won't be by the time this review goes out. And then you've got local multiplayer, which pitches 2, 3 or 4 players together in split screen action. Pleased to really report that there's no slowdown when you've got all of those different cameras going on elsewhere, and races are very, very short, and everything is kind of done in under 2 minutes. So expect this to be quick fire action. And as a result of that, it does burn through the content of SuperSpec Rallycross quite quickly. So those 20 tracks that I mentioned are variations on a theme, and each track can kind of have a lap completed in under 20 seconds. So you burn through the different 20 layouts very, very quickly. And although each track comes with a joker route that you'll have to take once per race, because we're doing Rallycross here, the actual tracks themselves do start to blend into each other slightly because they take certain environments and pitch different routes through them. So it might be that the one that's more squarey has a slightly different entry in the final chicane so that it becomes just a 90-degree corner rather than a bank chicane that goes slightly onto mud. And they'll be considered 2 tracks, but the other 3 or 4 corners are identical. So you're kind of going, okay, variation on a theme. But that happens quite a few times, and I feel like this game would benefit from a couple of more tracks with those alternative layouts placed onto them to just beef out the amount of content that's here, because you speed through these tracks so quickly. It's also interesting that there's like just a couple of tracks in the ice biome or the snow biome and very little in the desert, and most of these are in like the kind of forest outback thing. So there's a bit of disproportion about the different themes that are available in this game. I think part of the issue is that because all of the cars are just aesthetically different rather than handling different, and although there are weather effects graphics that show that rain is falling, nothing really changes the handling model except for whether you're on tarmac or on dirt. And they do handle vastly differently, but all of the cars handle identically differently across the 2 terrains. So again, it just kind of funnels you down slightly to burning through this content faster than perhaps you would like. When it comes to the handling of the cars, this game has a what I would call ChoroQ or Takara style of handling, and they model their cars on remote control cars. And I feel like this is the general vibe that this game's going for. They're very analog and binary. And what I mean by that is that when you come to hairpins and you're going to try and get round with the analog stick, when you press onto the analog stick, it's all or nothing. So you'll hammer in, it's as if the rally driver has kind of spun the wheel round like an arcade machine cabinet, a bit like Super Sprint. And then your car kind of instantly oversteers in, but then skids because it's going too fast if you haven't broke. And then you just kind of skid off well off past the apex and look really ridiculous and amateurish. What really works better in this game is to feather off the throttle coming into tight corners. And then I was using the analog stick and the D-pad to just kind of like tap, 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 nudge my way around, as if it was kind of going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And I think part of the reason why this works well for me is the way how the cars seem to... They're not quite a 2D object on a 3D plane, but the perspective of the camera kind of foreshortens where your car actually is. And so quite often you're climbing over curbs, and particularly when you're turning around going back up the screen, I find that you can lose so much time by just following where you think the car is. It's better to just be all over the curbs and slightly onto the grass maybe, and use the grass to slow you down to hook you into the corner and get round quicker than if you was trying to be smooth and precise with your braking and turning with analog sticks. I think, and I found this with ChoroQ and Takara games beforehand, and quite a lot of RC games actually, when they take on this approach, it's really Marmite, and you have to kind of tune your brain into it to realise how to go fast. I've got there. It took me a couple of hours, but I still feel like there's some inconsistency in there where I don't feel like I fully grasped the handling model to get consistency lap on lap on lap. And some of that I think is because you instantly feel like you can kind of hang on and drift round the edges of corners, and that just doesn't work. One of the things that also accentuates my inconsistency in my driving style with this game is that all of the objects, except for the barriers, you can just drive through. So sometimes you're thinking, oh no, I'm coming up to a lamppost or a gate that goes over the track. Just drive through it because it doesn't actually hurt you or do anything at all. And that's slightly a disappointment because then it starts to make you think about how you cut corners rather than drive it properly. So I do hope that those objects start to become actual objects in the way, maybe in a future patch. That might be too much to ask for. But yeah, just think that a lot of if it's not a tyre barrier, it's window dressing and you can drive right through it. For me, the most fun that I had with SuperSpec Rallycross was when I cranked it up to the hardest difficulty, and that's because the AI can go faster down a straight than you, which means you have to really think about driving defensively, and it also brought into the tactics of when you take a joker lap, which wasn't present for me in the earlier difficulties because I was just winning anyway. But when you've got cars that are all faster than you in a straight line, you really have to think about when's the best time to take the joker lap. Do you do it early because you're at the back of the field at the start and then try and hope that you've got enough racecraft to win out? Or do you make sure that you go early and block off other people trying to get the upper hand on a joker lap because you're further out front at the start, for example? It's really up to you, and different circuits will mean that you play different tactics depending on how you go racing. Outside of that, great fun in multiplayer. I've had very little chance to play multiplayer though, and that's why there's very little footage of that here. And time trial, I could see myself sinking quite a bit of time into too. Is this a Circuit Superstar beta? Absolutely not. And that's because it's not really pitched in that way, but also this is a very, very small team punching well above their weight on something that is really nicely put together. There are definitely some rough edges around it, but the passion seeps through in everything that you do in this game, and it takes me back to a nice happier time in the early 90s when pure adrenaline fueled gameplay was the paramount of what a good gaming experience was like, and anything that takes me back to that era and that style of gaming just makes me happy. So it's a thumbs up from me from SuperSpec Rallycross. If you're worried about that binary handling model, there is a demo for you to test things out on, and I think that will help you make up your mind really, really quickly if this is for you or not. And if it is, or if you're still on the fence, I recommend taking the plunge, because this is a bit like a excitable puppy of a game, because it's desperate to make you smile wherever possible, and that labour of love shines through in every racing lap you do. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/HigherPlaneNetwork. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.